Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. If you can see my face or hear my voice, you know it is time once again for the worst 120 minutes or so in all of sports. That's right. It is time again for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. And I am joined, as always, by my faithful partner in all things podcasting, producer Stead. Stead, how you doing this week?
Uh, all I'm gonna say is this. I wish I had been a betting man, because what I would have done over the last 20 or so years is always bet on a Spanish team in the European final. Their record is absolutely insane. I believe it is 5 teams have all won a final in the last 20 years. Real Madrid, I think Villarreal, I think maybe even 6. Of course, Real, Barcelona, and Atleti. It's crazy. It's really crazy. I believe the next closest, I think they've won 37 or something like that, or 27 or something like that. And the next closest is England with 13. So the dominance of Sevilla, yes. I don't know why I left them out, because that was the first team I thought of when I started on this rant. But this is also a guy who's had about 2 hours of sleep. So, man, that's all I can say. Always bet on Spain. If you're in a final. Bet on Spain.
I think the only Spanish team over the course of the last decade or so to lose a final is Atleti, who lost to Real Madrid.
Yes, every Spanish team that's lost a final has only lost to another Spanish team since 2000. So, yeah. I mean, that's a level of continental dominance that I think that I really wasn't. I guess you kind of think about it. You're like, yeah, I guess so. But it's easy to separate the Europa League and the Champions League. But it's been remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And even over the weekend, you're like, they won the game. They kind of deserve to win the game. So, it was definitely impressive. Definitely impressive.
So I am going to say congrats to Real Madrid. I believe, if I get my Spanish correct, and I know Los will correct me if I don't, La Catorce or Una Catorce. It shouldn't be Una Catorce, because that would be a 14th. La Catorce would be the 14th.
El Catorce.
El Catorce. El Catorce, 14 for Real Madrid. We will definitely get into this. Before that, though, I gotta admit, instead, Saturday was a great day. I had a blast. Rob was down there. We had a table full of people, probably a table full of people that should have been 2 or 3 tables, given how many people were there. Everybody was just showing up out of nowhere. It was a really great atmosphere. And then Sunday hit, and there was like nothing to watch. And I was like, so bummed.
Hey.
Yeah,
sorry.
What are you talking about?
There was plenty to watch.
There's nothing to watch.
Okay. I'm sorry. Monday, there was nothing to watch. Sunday, yes, you are all right. Mike, the richest game in football. I know that we'll talk about Nottingham Forest in Huddersfield, and we may even get Los to chime in on this, because there were some refereeing issues that need to be addressed. There was some German football. I personally, and London Sean is not here, but I was watching the Indian Premier League finals and switching back in between the Indian Premier League final and between Gujarat Titans and Rajasthan Royals, which actually turned out to be a very, very good game. Gujarat wins the IPL title as an expansion club. So, hey, 1 for 1, you can't beat that. So, yes, Sunday, there was a lot of stuff, and I leave out the Grand Prix of Monaco, but I am a little bit disappointed because all of that stuff happened Saturday and Sunday, and Monday I woke up and there was nothing. Fortunately, I did find a barbecue to go to, or like created one, and that was good. And tomorrow I get Scotland and the Ukraine, hopefully we'll get some time to talk about that and the US and Monaco. So maybe the withdrawal won't be that bad. But we have a full cast of characters tonight to talk about the Champions League finals and what went on this weekend. I'm going to start with the neutrals, then go to I'm not even going to call them losers. I'm just going to call them the non-victorious side before I get to, because to the victors go to spoils, before I get to our proud victorious celebrant this evening, who actually, Los, you have had a lot to celebrate over the last couple of years. So life has been good to you when it comes to championships. Don't complain. So, Byron Rob, how are you doing this evening?
I'm exhausted because I just came from the gym, but I'm here and ready to go.
All right. Our good friend Chelsea Mike ready to chime in. Probably talk a little bit about lower league stuff once we get past this whole entire UCL final thing. How's it going, Mike?
It's going really well. You know, it's hot as all get out here in the Pocono Mountains of northeastern Pennsylvania tonight. Over 95 today. So, you know, we're sweating it out, but we're surviving.
Los is like,
If it's
what is this, April?
Yeah, if you
It's
think
like January
hot,
weather.
Yeah, if you think
I mean,
it's
you
hot,
don't move to the mountains to be 95 and humid, you know? I mean, it's hot.
yeah, but you're not going to get any sympathy from us, because you know, Los, it was 95 at January. The rest of us, it's been 95 for the last couple of days. The only one who might have something is the Prince of Darkness himself, British Will. I know you're in Hawaii, so the trade winds might keep things a little bit cooler.
I mean, you know, it's a very variable temperature. It's between 79 and 85 year round.
Yeah,
It's not
Life
it's
is
not
rough.
really changed. You know, whenever it's 79, all the children are shivering and in blankets, and it's kind of hilarious. But I am also still sweating in 79, so I do feel you, Wembley, Mike.
And Professor Matt, how goes it in the great city of Philadelphia this evening?
Also hot as hell, but we move.
And a happy birthday goes out to Professor Matt, who celebrated his over the weekend. So cheers,
Thank
my
you.
friend. And finally, last but not least, Los, who celebrated El Catorce with a satchel full of Richards at a bar in Tampa.
Urban Springs, but yes, Satchel Full of Richards it's a good beer. It's like 8.5% IPA Imperial. Really very good.
Mhm. Yes, a satchel full of Richards. All right, gentlemen. It wasn't a bad final. It wasn't a great final. It ranks somewhere in between. And we will get to the fact that it was delayed by about 36 to 40 minutes in a little bit. Before we get on to what happened outside of the stadium, I actually want to talk about what happened inside. Rob, you and I did our preview on Thursday last with Professor Matt. One of the things that we identified when we talked about this game was Vinicius and the matchup in between Vinicius Jr. and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And that proved prophetic because it was in the second half. Vinicius Jr., who was able to find some space in behind Trent Alexander-Arnold and get the goal that would ultimately be the game winner. Thibaut Courtois stood on his absolute head, neck, shoulders, feet, legs, every part of his body to keep a pretty potent Liverpool attack out. But in the end, it was Real Madrid who win their 14th, 1-0. So before I get on to the partisans, Rob, you were sitting there watching it with me. So we got to talk at length during the game. What did you think of this final? And what do you think of the victorious Real Madrid side?
I enjoyed it because there was plenty of chances. Nobody really sat back deep and, just, in the T block. It wasn't like they both wanted to attack. As you saw from Liverpool, they had plenty of chances, plenty of shots on goals. The one thing that I was puzzled a lot was seeing Trent Alexander-Arnold higher up the pitch than I anticipated him being. And I go back to the 2020 Champions League final between PSG and Bayern because, throughout the whole run, Alphonso Davies, who it plays almost like a winger or like a wing back, just going up and down the pitch, sort of, and has offensive prowess like Trent Alexander-Arnold. But in that final, they kept him kind of not going up the pitch as much, specifically because to keep, Di Maria and Mbappe and Neymar kind of in check a little bit more than usual. And so when I saw Trent Alexander-Arnold moving up and actually sort of close to the box, I was kind of puzzled because you're just giving space to Vinicius Jr. Now the midfield did do a good job of preventing the outlets to the wings, but as Professor Matt said, earlier, a few days ago, he does have lapses, and all it took was one lapse. Vinicius Jr. got behind him. Alexander-Arnold forgot he was there, and that was all. And it was a beautiful cross by Valverde, and there she goes. And that's all it took. One goal. And Liverpool had plenty of chances, but Courtois just had a game of his life. And this was probably the first game where he made people forget about Keylor Navas. This is his first Champions League final where he's won it. And he had an amazing performance. This is a Keylor Navas-esque performance. That's how good it was. And all props to him. But yeah, the defensive lapse and Courtois was the story here.
Mike, your Chelsea has played Liverpool twice in finals. What was it that Real Madrid did this time around to do something that Chelsea hadn't and actually score a goal?
They scored a goal. That was pretty much the difference there. They scored and it didn't go to penalty kicks. But honestly, I don't know about Raw. I think full credit should be given to Thibaut Courtois, not comparing him to anyone else. Thibaut Courtois used to be our goaltender, and he's always been an excellent world-class keeper. And in fact, I don't think there was any displeasure with him at Chelsea. He just didn't want to be there. He wanted to be back in Madrid with his family. And that worked out really great for him. But I don't think it could be understated how good he was in that game. Just, nipping the Mane shot onto the post there. He was clearly the difference. And it's not often that a man of the match goes virtually undisputed by everyone, every commentator involved. But he was just so awesome. So I guess you could say that Thibaut Courtois was a difference, although he allowed just as many goals as Edouard Mendy in our two finals. But I think the emergence of Vinicius Jr., who was somehow put on the FIFA cover 2 or 3 years ago when he was well before it, he's certainly come of age, and he's looking like a fine player, for Real for a long time and for Brazil as we go into a World Cup here. So I think that would be awesome. Brazil versus Belgium in the World Cup final. Vinny, Courtois, it's setting up for that. But phenomenal game by Thibaut Courtois.
All right, Stead,
Mhm.
what'd you think of it?
Sorry, a little equipment failure there.
What'd you think of the game?
Well, I'll tell you this. This is when I knew Liverpool were going to lose. Early in the game, when the commentator said that Konate had never lost a game in a Liverpool jersey, I was like, well, that's it. They're going to lose. I mean, the jinx was real. It was so real. And every time I hear that, I don't know why that bothers me. So it's one of my other pet peeves that I can't stand about when I watch sports. One is, a team hasn't won since, and they name a year like 2 years ago to make it seem like that's a long time. Real Madrid haven't won a Champions League since 2019. You're like, wow, that's 2 years ago. It's not that big of a deal. But and another one is, Mike, which are well ever, when you wear a jersey to a game of a team that's not playing in that game. That's another one. And this is another one. It's when the jinx or the commentator. I was quite upset because then I was like, well, do I just turn this off now? Because now Liverpool's going to lose because they just put the jinx in. And then the double jinx was when everyone said that the goal for the save for the Mane shot was the save of the game, and that's going to be the game. That's going to be the difference maker. And it turns out that it was. And you're like, I should have watched this game on mute. I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. But that's just me being a hater.
But I watched it in Spanish.
Yeah, you know what? I need to start because I have to learn Spanish this winter. That's my goal. So I'll be sending you some random text messages, Lo. So hope you're ready.
Could I just mention that it seemed like the commentators were different? Were they? They weren't. I don't think CBS's A team throughout most of the Champions League. I really couldn't even pin their voice.
Yeah, I had to look up, and I left me. I forgot who they were. Of course, as you guys know, I tend to like when Kate Abdo's on TV. So I was just pretty much just watching the mid show. And I think Micah Richards is also. I think he's getting better and better and better as a studio analyst. But the game itself, though, taking away all of the extra drama and garbage that goes along with these types of productions, I thought the game was fantastic. Though it was a great game to watch. Just from a fan standpoint, especially from a fan of a team who never has any real success in any sort of European competition, it was great to just enjoy that game as just watching it as a fan. A buddy of mine texted me and he was like, "This is great. Real Madrid's still going for it late in the game. They're not playing trees. They're not sitting back. They're still putting on some level of attack." And you saw Liverpool, they just kept going and going and going and going and going. And it's not one of those games you can say like the better team won or one team deserved it more than the other. It was just a great game, and Real Madrid won 1-0. And I think we should applaud the efforts of both teams. I have not had as much time as I would like to watch football this year, so that was a very, very welcome end of the season for me. And I think we should really think about Real Madrid in the vein of, this is a team that all year has been said that this team is not a very strong Real Madrid team. We've been hearing that all year long from people heavily involved in La Liga, and yet they won a quite prestigious double with Champions League and La Liga. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I feel like has that gotten lost in a way? And I know we were often paying attention to Liverpool's chances to win this quad, but Liverpool had a very successful season. But I think that because, of course, we're going to get more of the English media and we're much more focused on things that are happening in England. But I think that we should really take a long look at how good is this Real Madrid team. I mean, this is a team that just battled. Now it looks like they have the front runner for the Ballon d'Or. Man, is this one of the great Real Madrid teams of the last 20 years? I don't know. But I think it's a question that maybe people are going to be talking about. It's a double. It's a big deal. It's still a double.
I think it's a double, and I don't ever want to detract from the accomplishment that was winning La Liga and winning the Champions League. I do not think this is the best Real Madrid team ever. I certainly don't believe it's the best.
Saying that, yeah, but
I don't think it's the best Real Madrid team that I've seen in the last 10, 15 years. I just think this was a team that had the right chemistry and the right manager and was able to accomplish something that looked at the beginning of the season to be improbable. And I think the greatness of this Real Madrid team is in what they accomplished. Not that they were dominant, but that this group of players, as flawed as they were able to come together and win the games that they needed to win to do this. This was not a team that by any stretch of the imagination ran away with the Champions League. They were not a dominant team. This was not a team that ran through and didn't lose or set scoring records or anything like that. Shoot, this team lost a group stage game at home to FC Sheriff Tiraspol.
From Moldova. But which is why I think it needs to be a conversation about the squad. I think the things that you're pointing out is the reason why I think there should be a real conversation about the squad. That is amazing. That is absolutely
amazing. It's amazing. But I think if you put this team up against one of the three that won 3 in a row earlier in the mid-aughts, I think they get run off of that squad, that pitch by those guys who are younger and have.
Yeah, but I thought they were going to get run off the pitch by Liverpool. All I'm saying is that we have to recognize this accomplishment as something that those teams didn't do. This team did. That
Real Madrid team that won on Saturday was better than the Real Madrid team that won the last time they won the Champions League against.
Agreed. I agree.
There is no question in my mind about
1,000%. I agree.
I agree that they are that, and I think I guess instead we're getting into semantics as we occasionally do.
Occasionally, Mike. That's what our show has been built on in the 4 years we've been doing this together.
I want to recognize them for what they are and the uniqueness of what they accomplished with the squad that they had. And say, like, this team wasn't dominant, but they were different, right? And give them credit for the comebacks, for the fact that they had all of that adversity to get there. And I think the fact that they had gone through all of that was what made them so prepared to go in on Saturday and compete, because, let's be honest, they were playing with house money. And they played, and I think they played a slightly looser game than Liverpool did. They were not overawed by the occasion. They knew who they were and what they were going to do, and they said, you know what, we're going to go out, we're going to do what we do, and the chips fall where they may. We've been down before, we've been up before, we know who we are, we know what we can do, and we're going to do what we can do. If it's good enough on the day, so be it. If not, it is what it is. All right, Matt, Liverpool did not give you the birthday present that you had intended.
No, they did not. We had chances. We had plenty of chances. One big defensive mistake, and we spoke about that last Thursday. But, Courtois was on smoke. 9 saves in total in the match, which I believe is a record for a final. There's not really much you can do about that. The shithousery, which I'm sure we're going to talk about before the match, I think did not help. If anything, I think it gave a slight psychological edge to Real Madrid, but at the same time, I'm not going to blame that. We got beat by one big defensive error and a absolutely fantastic goalkeeping masterclass, and not for any kind of sort of mystical, magical properties. Not having Divock Origi as another kind of option or another kind of striker coming off the bench when you do need a goal in a match like this, I think did hurt. It may seem strange, but look, Jota is not a typical number 9, and maybe a bigger, more physical presence could have broken things down in the last 10 minutes, but we'll never know. So,
all right, Will, who has renamed himself the Prince of Sadness today. You woke up early, you celebrated. Apparently, at some point in time, you said that you were watching track meet instead of the game. But I know what was really going on. It was, I guess, not fun. What
No,
were
it
your
was
thoughts on it?
it was fun. I mean, it was a good game of football. I think everyone's sort of making this big deal about Trent Alexander-Arnold being out of position and, it's his defensive mistake. But realistically, that ball should never have gotten through to Vinicius. It was a defensive mistake by Robertson to allow the ball through to Valverde. And before that, two Liverpool midfielders, the two midfielders on that side of the pitch, Fabinho and I believe Henderson, missed out on blocking that ball off before the pass should have even occurred. It was good play by Real Madrid, and you don't have to forget, like when you watch it back, like Benzema is doing Benzema things. Trent starts off that play marking Benzema, and Vinicius is behind him as he should be. Trent does everything correctly as a right back because Konate is shifted over. Virgil van Dijk is covering Valverde, and they shift the defensive line back across. Everyone's making this big deal about, it's defensive mistake by Alexander-Arnold. Yes, slightly. He's not covering his man. His man is free, but that ball shouldn't have been able to get in there. Like, it shouldn't have been able to be put in the position that Vinicius should have been able to connect with it.
I want
And
to kind
so
of,
that's the sort of way that Liverpool plays. They play a high risk game with a high back line. And so everyone's saying, oh, it's Trent's fault. Yeah, kind of. But if you're going to put the blame on Trent, you have to put the blame on Robertson as well.
I want to
And
kind of,
so,
Go ahead, Matt.
yeah, I want to piggyback on what the Prince of Sadness is saying. It was a defensive mistake, but it was a collective defensive mistake. Robertson was equally out of play, and both Van Dijk and Konate, it's because we're addicted to this high line. You could tell they were just slightly out of sync. So it's on Trent, but it's not totally on Trent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I get that, but there are also two things. Number one, the decision to go with Konate in this game versus a Matip, number one. Number two, the high line. I know that you live and die by the girl that brung you. You dance with the girl that brung you. But Rob brought up an interesting stat earlier. 9 saves by Thibaut Courtois. We've already acknowledged his greatness, Matt and Will. But the other one, 22 clearances and 8 blocks by Real Madrid. And in my notes on the game, what I have is every time Liverpool came down the pitch and they wanted to center the ball or they got into a score, there just seemed to be 1 or 2 Real Madrid defenders who were just, in the right place at the right time. And it's easy to sit there and say that it's luck, but I also know that Carlo Ancelotti has won a lot of matches.
I mean, it's not luck, it's skill. I mean, those were very, very well put together defensive units, and they were very, very well executed throughout the entirety of the game. Yes, Courtois made 9 saves, but I was talking on the phone with 2 of my friends who are very big Real Madrid fans, and we had a bit of a conversation about it. And I called them at halftime right after the, let's be honest, wrongly disallowed goal. And they were saying, like, you're so lucky, you're so lucky, you're so ever, yada yada yada. And I called them at full time, and we were talking about it. And I said, I think that if that wrongly disallowed goal had been allowed, the game would have been different. Because I think that the second half, there would have been some pretty major changes at halftime by Liverpool. And there weren't major changes at halftime. There were major changes in the 60th minute after the goal had gone in. And Liverpool has shown an ability to come back from those situations in the past. Don't get me wrong. But Real Madrid has also shown an ability to stop comebacks. And they just did that better than Liverpool.
Now-
I'm not too big to admit that Real Madrid played a better game than Liverpool at the game they were playing. And yes, there was some heroics from the Real Madrid team, but if you're going to win the Champions League final, you need to be a heroic team, and they were. So all credit to Real Madrid there.
Matt, I'll start with you on this. One thing that we're going to have to look back at when we look back at this Real Madrid team, and despite everything that they accomplished, that was 3 finals that they played in. And over the course of 3.5 hours worth of football and finals, they scored a grand total of 0 goals in regulation or extra time. One of the most free-flowing, highly scoring teams throughout the course of the season and cup matches, got to 3 finals and could not muster a single goal. Riddle me that one, Batman.
I think there's 3 sort of components to this. The first is, I see Wembley Mike smiling there. Look, Chelsea is our kryptonite. They don't beat us, but we don't beat them. Let's be real. Defensively, they set up really well. Real Madrid, obviously Courtois, their own defensive efforts. Part of it, I genuinely believe, is fatigue. You saw, I read something today. Diaz wound up playing something like 73 matches this season. That's unusual. Going for the quad was very cool, but it also came with a price tag, and it's tired legs. The third part of the equation is sort of, it's something that I think we're going to have to address during the summer, and it is maybe an issue with Liverpool in general. We can score goals with the best of them. But again, I sort of hinted at that when I said, no Divock Origi. We only have one genuine number 9 on the team. Well, now we have none. And in certain matches, when you need a goal late or you're facing a low block team, the crosses from the outside, you need somebody big in the box who could just put the ball away. And that match in particular on Saturday was screaming for that, I thought. The other thing is, I like our midfield. We have 0 goal threat from the midfield. Let's be real. Our midfielders we don't even have a KDB light. And the last time we had someone like that really was Ox in 17-18. So I think, if the front 3 isn't totally clicking, and when I say the front 3, particularly the wingers, yeah, we do kind of have problems, scoring goals. And so I think those are the 3 things that I would identify. I'm not sure what our friend the Prince of Sadness has to say about that, but for me, part of it's tired legs, part of it's the opposition, the matchups, but part of it is, as good as the squad is, there are some deficiencies, or should I say weaknesses.
All right, go ahead, Will.
3 finals, 2 wins. So yeah, I know 0 goals in regulation, but 3 finals, 2 wins. And that goes back to an immortal tenet of one Jose Mourinho. You don't play finals, you win finals. And so what if the football's kind of crap in the final? Is essentially what Jose's thought was. If you win it, you've won it. And I don't particularly like that. I hate Jose Mourinho as a manager, and I hate him as sort of a finals winner. But I think that part of what Jurgen Klopp has done has evolved his game. If you watch his original final with Liverpool against Sevilla in 2016 in the Europa League, Liverpool went out to play the game and they lost the game because of some bullshit. They scored several goals. They should have won penalties, got them denied, got them pulled back, and they got scored on 3 times. They went out to play free-flowing football and they got kind of crapped on. In 2018, when they lost the final to Real Madrid, they went out to play free-flowing football and they lost the final. In 2016, they went out to play the League Cup final and they lost the final. They lost the final to Manchester City on penalties. And part of the reason they lost that final was because they went out to play free-flowing football. And so Jurgen Klopp has evolved as a manager when he plays in finals. He plays a much different game, and it's a game that doesn't necessarily lose him matches. Liverpool playing against Tottenham in the Champions League final. They didn't play a really nice game. They scored early and they scored late. Liverpool playing against Chelsea in the last 2 finals. They didn't play very nice games to watch. They just won. Liverpool playing against Real Madrid this time. They played a pretty enjoyable game to watch, but they got caught out when they were like pushing forward and they were trying to push for a goal in the 60th minute. So yeah, 3 finals, 0 goals in regulation, but it sort of shows the growth of Klopp as a manager, for me, at least.
All right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think they got caught out there at the last, because Alexander Arnold was there. He just wasn't in the right position. You know, I think honestly, Liverpool set up excellently for this game. I do think Jurgen Klopp's a brilliant manager. So I don't really think that any of the managerial decisions really, and I mean, it was 1-0, right? It wasn't that one-sided.
I don't disagree with you. I think we're arguing around the same tree here.
Yeah, it wasn't anything that they could do. I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to how they execute on the field. And for whatever reason, this time around,
Well, and
all just didn't go into the net for them.
I think too, it's 0 goals in these last 3 finals. Because I completely agree with Will's point. But in those early finals, look, that wasn't just that particularly what we had to play so open because we had no goddamn defense. Like, this is different now. But yeah, kryptonite, tired legs, and like I said, I think there are a couple warts, but minor.
All right, now to the man that actually won. Like a famous Roman who also went to goal, Real Madrid. When they run, we care on. They came, they sold, they conquered, Los.
That they did. Before we get to talking about the game, I know we've been talking about the game, but I just wanted to point of clarification on Will's comment regarding Liverpool scoring early and late versus Tottenham. Yeah, they did score late, but the one that they scored early, that was a 12th man. Thank you, Mr. Official. You never win alone, right? That's how it. YNWA is what it stands for. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, what a game. I mean, I got to be honest, it was not a terrible game to watch, even for a neutral. It was moving back and forth, and Courtois was just on fire. He just couldn't be stopped. It was amazing. He totally deserved man of the match, and everyone, like I was saying earlier, the press agreed. He had the game of his life, and that was a very, very good game. Carlo Ancelotti winning the Champions League for the 4th time, I believe, and that's more than any other manager in history. Going with Ancelotti's winning a 5th league, a different league in Europe, a 5th title this year as well. That's quite an accomplishment, and I'm telling you, man, if he's not looking to leave now, I mean, this is the perfect exit. You won your 5th league. You won your 4th Champions League. You go out on top. I mean, smoking cigars and you look like a pimp. You know, that's to me, it would this be a perfect exit, but of course I'm not Ancelotti,
You're not Don Carlo.
I'm Carlos, I'm not Carlo, but yeah, not quite there. But yeah, incredible. I would like to say I did place a couple wagers on this match. I actually put down $10 to expect the game to go to penalty kicks. And I really did think it was going to go. And if it wasn't for Courtois, we would have got penalty kicks and I would have won some money, but it's the way it goes. They went out. I also expected Modric to have more of an effect on the game, a little more activity in the box, and perhaps maybe sneak a goal in there. And so the odds were just too good for me to pass up. So but I didn't get anything there either. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Sometimes you win and you lose at
Yes.
the exact same time.
I did that. I won once and lost twice in the same match.
Which feels better, winning the cup and losing the? Which would you take? If I told you were going to lose the $20 that you bet, but you're going to come home with the European Cup,
I'd be
would you
good.
take it-
That's
you'd
good.
be good.
That's good.
Yeah, you'll sacrifice the bets for the championship.
That was what I got anyway. So yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
mean, it's my
I'd
that's my
take the
reality right now.
$20. Let's be real. I'm a first year teacher.
Yeah, and the cost of living in Hawaii is a little bit pricey. So
Mhm.
I don't.
Yeah, that $20 is 1 gallon of gas.
Right.
That's 1 gallon of milk. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. I read somewhere that Leo Messi said that Real was not the best team in the UEFA Champions League tournament, and all I can say is, well, probably, maybe there might have been a better team, but when you talk about winning the games you need to win, as someone said earlier, I think it might have been Chelsea Mike said that, or Wembley Mike tonight, that you win the games that you have to win at the time you need to win them, and that's the mark of a champion, and that's exactly what happened here. We've seen some teams
Actually, Los, that was me.
Oh, it was you. Okay. Well, wrong mic. But anyway, but it's we've seen it before. There have been teams in other sports that don't play necessarily as well or aren't as dominant as others, and yet they win the games they need to. And in winning the games they need to, they become the champion. And one of the teams I can think of off the top of my head, only because I followed them from wire to wire, was the 1990 Cincinnati Reds in MLB baseball. They won every single game that they had to win, and they won their division. They won the championship, the NLCS, and then they swept the Oakland A's, heavily favored Oakland A's. They swept them in the World Series, but they weren't supposed to win any of that. So they weren't necessarily the best team. And the next year showed that they weren't really the best team because they made very few changes, same lineup, and they got like third place in their division. So it just shows that you got the hot hand, the team that gets hot, the team that wins when they're supposed to win. That's the team that gets the championship, and so that's how it goes. And so not making any apologies for it. It's just the nature of the game. You got to win the games in front of you. You don't have to be pretty, but you just got to just win what you got in front of you.
Los, you don't even need to go back all the way to 1990 for that.
Well, I'm sorry. I know it was back before Will was born, but
yeah,
yeah.
You can go back to 2007. Remember the 9-7 New York Giants beat the 17-0 New England Patriots.
Yeah.
in the Super Bowl. So sometimes when you play, what we love about champions, hey, and Mike and Matt will remember a Villanova team that was an 8th seed in the NCAA tournament that walked away with an NCAA championship over a heavily favored, led by future Hall of Famer Patrick Ewing,
Right.
Georgetown
right.
Boys team.
Yes.
Yep.
37
one other
years
thing,
later,
I
they're still the
wanted to-
lowest seeded team to do it.
Yes.
Yes, true. I would like to add one more thing about the match, and that is Vinicius Jr. being named the UCL Young Player of the Tournament, quite a prestigious honor, and you can only win that when you're young. You can't win it any other time. So it was his time to win it, and he showed that he was really a quality youth player of the tournament. So that was kudos to him. And Hala Madrid.
Los, you spoke about the possibility that Carlo Ancelotti makes his exit. I don't even need to put this to the field. Won a league title in each one of the 5 major leagues. The first manager to win the Champions League 4 times. Without a doubt, he is the best manager of this century. And as much as I love Sir Alex Ferguson, I think that his accomplishments in winning this 4th one kind of put him over the top. You spoke about the fact that, and we spoke recently, we've spoken about in the past that he might leave. Marcelo has announced that he's leaving. Some of the ancillary squad players, we know Gareth Bale is going, Isco's going. This could be a very different looking Real Madrid squad coming into next year. Is it kind of that point in time where, you know, they've squeezed the last ounce of juice? They've gotten that last sip of beer from the very bottom, that absolute last most flavorful sip from this iteration of players that came together in the, you know, late aughts, early teens, that won 3 Champions Leagues together. You look at Benzema and some of the guys on that team, Modric, Toni Kroos has 4. These guys that have accomplished all of this, is it that we're looking at the end of an era, and, you know, now it's time to turn it over to the Vinicius Juniors, the Rodrigos, the Eduardo Camavingas, and bring the Casemiros of the world, bring those guys in and let them get their chance to shine?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Real Madrid is not finished. They'll have a competitive team next year. They won La Liga by a substantial amount. They won it back in April, I think it was. They still have plenty of football to play, and they won it early enough where they were able to rest guys and keep them fresh for the final, the UCL final. So I don't think they're done by any stretch of the imagination. I think some of the guys are done and some of the guys are leaving, but there's always some young buck that's ready to go ahead and show that he's capable of playing professional soccer in La Liga and the Champions League, and looking to make his mark on the soccer world that we presently have. So I would say that Real Madrid is not quite out yet. Let's see what happens next year, but they won La Liga handily, and they won every game they had to in the Champions League. Wasn't pretty, but they got it. They got the job done, and I don't say that they're quite turning over any sort of passing any torch just yet, and doing a complete rebuild, but they will be losing some people for sure. I mean, how much longer does Benzema or Modric have left? I mean, they still look like they can play, and they did. They played for almost a full 90. Modric got subbed out late in the game, but he was, you know, still making quality passes. And that one, of course, the pass of the year, that one with the right foot a few weeks ago, he's still got the touch. He still can play. So now the question is, well, what do they do next with the next coach, assuming Ancelotti leaves, and who's going to take over, and what style will they play, and will they give him a chance to go ahead and try and win some matches, or are they going to, you know, let the leash go a little bit? Or are they going to pull the leash and no, we need to try and make a change? It's all up in the air, all hypothetical, all hearsay. let's just let it play out and see what happens. But I think Real Madrid is going to show that there's still a dominant force in La Liga and force to reckon with in the Champions League next year.
Rob, we talked about this. I know somebody who's suddenly now available, and no matter what I think of whether or not you should bring him to Real Madrid, apparently one Robert Lewandowski could be an option.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Byron.
Nah, you know what it is? You cannot tell Karim Benzema to sit on the bench. No, you're not going to bring in a Lewandowski and start him, and you're not going to bring in Lewandowski and bench him. I mean, it looks good, and you know when you're playing a video game in FIFA or your Pro Evo, but no, there's only room for one legit number 9 striker, and it's Benzema. Until he's ready to give it up, you know, and he's shown no signs of it. He's probably had one of his better seasons this season.
He's going to win the Ballon d'Ors, so yeah, this is probably one of his better seasons. It's probably his best.
Yeah, I get that, but you don't sit him, and you know you don't bring in a Lewandowski. You know, you brought it. You know, I remember after 2018, there was a movement. Lewandowski wanted to leave. I mean, he got a new agent, Penny Sahafi, and he's trying to force a move to Real, and that was the moment where, you know, I don't know why, but Real was thinking, you know, Benzema, you know, he's getting up there, but we want the best, we want Lewandowski, blah blah blah. And look how it turned out, right? So, no, I don't think a Lewandowski move makes sense here. If you want to find somebody to, you know, try to like, you want to groom them, you want Benzema to kind of like take under their wing a little bit, that's fine. You know, there's plenty of probably youngsters out there. But it's not going to be Lewandowski because, you know, Benzema has the number 9 spot on lock, and none of them are going to like the bench either. So no, you know, as far as Carlo goes, you know, look, Fiorentino Perez is just going to say, please come back. You know, like just come back. We'll give you whatever. We'll give you a raise. You know, and we forget a year ago, Carlo was coaching Everton. You know, we thought like this was the twilight of his club career. He was gonna hang out, you know, for a little bit after Everton, then do Italy, and now he's gonna go on his terms. You know, we thought the club game was gonna force him out, and now he's gonna have the last cigar. So it's crazy what a year can do to a manager. And also, we thought they were done too after the Sheriff game. We thought like the time has passed them by. And I probably said it. You know, Cruz is getting old, Modric getting old, and look what happens. They put in a good shift, and they did their jobs, and they left a trophy. So, can they squeeze out another year out of them? Maybe. But you know, like you said, you know, there are going to be players who are leaving, and you know, there's going to be room for reinforcement for a new generation. So this year should be interesting, but Carlo probably goes after, you know, next season on his terms and his terms only.
Wait, can I just say about Lewandowski to Real? I mean, I know that's a hot rumor, but I think
It's not actually a rumor. I was just having fun with that.
Well, no, I've seen it out there, but I do think it's a unique, and I've been hearing for years too that he wants to do that, but I think it's a uniquely bad fit. They're just like Rob mentioned, there's no room for him, but he also, it's a bad fit for Real too, right? 6 of the players on the field that started on Saturday are over 30. Real needs to get younger if they want to stay at this level, and Lewandowski doesn't help them. He takes away from Valverde and Vinicius Junior's opportunities. It's just not a good fit.
There is nothing in. Okay, so it's one thing for the media, and it's one thing for me to have a little bit of fun and piece together a transfer rumor because Robert Lewandowski says that he is done with Bayern. and say, oh, well, why not go to Real Madrid? There's nothing about Real Madrid right now, and I think Los will agree, that suggests that that would be the move that they would make. Florentino Perez recently, his signings have been tended to be on the younger side, and he's recognized that. So even he's saying, we're going for the likes of Camavinga, Rodrigo, Vinicius Jr. They tried for Mbappe, but Mbappe would have been on a free, and the difference being that Mbappe's on the lower side of 20, not the bad side of 30, right? If I'm being honest, I think a more legitimate rumor would be Lewandowski to Liverpool, but I'm not sure how much that one fits either, given the salary constraints that they operate under, and do you want to upset that for Lewandowski? Now, we can talk about Sadio Mane and the potential of a swap between Sadio Mane and Robert Lewandowski, but I'm being honest, I think at this point in time, giving Bayern Sadio Mane for Lewandowski is actually solving Bayern's problems more than it's solving Liverpool's.
I'm going to disagree, purely because I can, and also because it's basically the one place that Robert Lewandowski could go and stay at the same level. He can't go to Manchester City. They've bought Erling Haaland. He can't go to Real Madrid. They have Karim Benzema. He can't really go to PSG because it's PSG and they're shit. Where is he going to go to Barcelona? No, he's not going to go to Barcelona. Juventus is completely out of the picture. Can he go to AC Milan? No, they're kind of good now, but they're not great. I mean, anywhere in Italy is kind of a joke. There's really only one place that
You
he
kind
can
of skipped.
go.
You skipped one.
Oh, what, you're talking about Chelsea? Are you really thinking he's going to go to Chelsea?
I don't
Chelsea
really,
now
but
under
you
new ownership. Chelsea now under an ownership that doesn't really like to spend money based on historical preference.
So you're
Yeah,
saying
what historical
Lewandowski?
precedent are you talking about? The Dodgers have one of the
there are
highest
really only
payrolls in all of
very
baseball.
there are some very small places that Robert Lewandowski could go
Newcastle?
and
Yeah,
be
Yeah.
accepted as, not just being a money grabbing little piece of trash.
I really don't
And
think anyone
I
at
know
Chelsea.
that Robert Lewandowski probably doesn't mind looking like a money grabbing piece of trash, but he also wants to be on a team that can win him a Champions League, can win him a Premier League, can win him a trophy. And so there are really only two places he can go right now, and that is PSG and Liverpool. And if he goes to PSG, he has to contend with the fact that he's on a PSG team that is completely in flux and does not really do anything well. And if he goes to Chelsea, maybe he goes to Chelsea, but he has history with Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp was the person who discovered him. And he's 32, 33 years old?
33.
He's 33. And I know we like to think anyone who is over the age of 30 is completely dead and buried. But if we look at the Real Madrid team that just won on Saturday, that's not true. They're 36, 37 years old. They're not dead and buried. Football players' lives are getting longer because of the scientific advances of the world. And yes, he's going to be an older player, but Jurgen Klopp is not going to be there forever. And I think he wants to bring someone in. And if Mane does leave, there are only two logical options. One is Heung-min Son, which I know Los will hate, and one is Robert Lewandowski. So
will you pay Matt? Will you pay him the 400,000 a week that it's going to cost to get him.
350,
400,
325,
400,
300,
400.
300.
He makes about 20, almost 25
Million.
million euros, which is he's the highest paid player at Bayern. He could easily make more in the Premier League. But remember, I mean, I don't know what the tax structure is either. But Bayern had been very adamant of saying he's not going anywhere. And I mean, I don't know, like that's what they're saying. They're willing to suck it up. I mean, you know, there's been, if anything, there's been talks of getting rid of Serge Gnabry and using some of that money plus whatever they got for Mane, and having Mane and Lewandowski together for a season, and let Lewandowski go, next season on a free and potentially win a Champions League before then. So I don't know, but look, Liverpool, there are going to be some changes up top. I'm sad. I don't like when like teams and clubs lose players who have major impacts who won titles together. It's going to be really tough to see Mane not be there anymore. You just know him, as a Liverpool player. He's brought so many memories as a Liverpool player that it just going to feel really, really weird him not being there and Luis Diaz being there instead. So, I mean, it's tough, and I don't know what's going on with Mo Salah either. I mean, did they have 1 year left and then he had to negotiate? I mean, they need to like figure it out, because to lose two iconic players like that, it's going to be really tough to swallow in the Kop stand. So I don't want them to leave that way. They need to leave on their terms, into retirement. I mean, that's the Cinderella story. I mean, that's like, I'm Disney-fying the experience here, but I mean, I would love to see clubs keep players like that. Just sometimes, you're not paying them for what they're going to do. You're paying them for what they did for you. So
you also need to stay, as Liverpool like to do, within the existing wage structure, so that you don't run into, I mean, roughly to equate in pounds what he makes in euros, it's going to be 425,000 pounds per week that they would have to pay Robert Lewandowski, which is far in excess of anything that they're paying any of their players right now. And Liverpool, if anything else, Mike, Chelsea, Matt, and Will, what am I saying? Professor Matt and Will, Liverpool has been extremely disciplined in how they have spent their money, and that's what's brought them success. And we're going to see how cutthroat Klopp and the regime can be. If it is, we have to let Mane go. Are they going to do that and succumb to the temptation that a lot of teams have? Or are they going to make the smart business decision, say, we've got Luis Diaz, we've got Diogo Jota, we've got guys waiting in the wings, we can use that money effectively, we believe in our youth system and we believe in our scouting system, the same ones who brought us Luis Diaz, who brought us the kid that they just signed from Fulham, and say, like, hey, we'll move on. So before we totally get lost, and we do need to get on to the lower league stuff, we need to talk about what happened outside of the game, because that too was a major league issue. The game was delayed by approximately, by my math, about 36 minutes. UEFA announced early that the game was going to be delayed because they were having trouble getting fans into the stadium.
Well, they first said the fans were late. They blamed it on the fans.
Yes, they said the fans were late and they had not been able to get in. It has since come out that there were issues that affected the Liverpool fans more than others. And I refuse to put this all on Liverpool fans because, yes, I understand the reputation. And it's easy to say, well, the English fans, the Liverpool fans were at fault for this, but I don't believe that to genuinely be the case. The French have said, the French authorities, the stadium authorities and the police have said that there was an issue involving Liverpool fans by the thousands showing up without valid tickets, that they had fake tickets, but this created a congestion that prevented them from being able to get in. Andy Robertson has said that he gave one of his friends a ticket to go to the game from Liverpool, the team themselves, and his friend was turned away at the gate and told that the ticket was counterfeit. I'm not 100% sure how you counterfeit those tickets. Now, granted, I have one from the 2009 Champions League final, which looks like a credit card, and it seems like it would be very, very hard to counterfeit. The pictures and all the anecdotal evidence seems to suggest that Liverpool fans showed up 2-3 hours early, only to find that the gates were closed and that they just weren't allowing anybody in. Needless to say, this has become an issue. UEFA, France, FIFA are going to need to sort out. I don't think I'm not going to blame any group of fans for this wholeheartedly. Is it possible that there was a group of Liverpool fans that showed up with tickets that were not above board? Yeah, 100% so. But that's not reflective of anything other than those people who tried to do it. What I still struggle to understand, gentlemen, is how these issues keep cropping up when, I got to say, we run major events, and all of us have been to major events here in the States, and we don't run into these kinds of problems.
Even in World Cups, we don't have issues with this.
You don't hear about this sort of stuff with Super Bowls. You don't hear about this sort of stuff with games that bring in more people. Los, you and I have been to Army-Navy games together. Not an issue. We have been to soccer games here in the States. We've been to football games here in the States. We've been to massive events here in the States. Sometimes I wish that, European stadium authorities could just come over and see how we run an average Saturday game at FedEx Field, at Raymond James, at Lincoln Financial, to see how you actually process people in and out of the stadium and get them through in a timely manner to do that. Because for the life of me, I don't know how this happened. And more than anybody else, I'm actually going to lay the blame straight at the feet of the French authorities, who were somehow unequipped and untrained on how to handle this. Because it was possible that, if this actually happened, and again, let me qualify this, I am not saying or blaming Liverpool fans any day of the week and twice on Sunday. If fans showed up for this game without tickets thinking that they could gain entry, what on earth gives them the reason to do that? Because I know for one thing, I am not going to Super Bowl. I'm not going to the Army-Navy game. I'm not going to any one of these events that we stage in this country without a ticket thinking that I'm going to make it in. You know why? Because we've all been there and we know it's not going to happen. And more likely than not, you're going to end up in jail under the stadium, right? I'm just not going to do that because we know that's not going to work. What would make them think that they could do this? What makes the French authorities think that the best way to do this is shut up shop, not let anybody in, and then wander around and launch tear gas at people?
Even the press.
Yes,
They threw tear gas at the press.
yes. Yeah. Like in
I think-
Marseille,
I
they
think
are
the best thing we can say about this was it's an absolute shit show. And
That's
we
the
can
best thing you can
speculate.
say.
We can speculate all we want about what happened. I don't believe it was the fans. And I also don't believe that it was intentionally done by certain groups of people within the police. I think it was just general managerial incompetence and general lack of preparedness.
that's
And
the point that I'm getting at is like,
It's-
how though are you not prepared as a police force, as stadium security to handle this when I am able to see it done week in, week out, day in, day out at multiple venues across the United States of America, across not one, but 4 different professional sports, all of whom can at a minimum draw 20,000 people into an arena and process them through effectively on any given evening. It's not like I don't see this happen. It's not like I don't see this happen on a regular basis. You know, I bought tickets today to go and see the Phillies play. Hey, Mike, I'm coming up on July 4th. If you want to go and see the Phils play in St. Louis, you're more than welcome to join, although we'll have our seats. But you know why I bought tickets? Because I know I can't show up at Citizens Bank Park without tickets and expect to get into that stadium. It's just, I know that if I'm going to go to an Eagles game or a Commanders game or an Army Navy game or a bowl game or a Super Bowl, let's put it this way, gentlemen, again, within the space of 6 weeks in this country, in between middle of January and middle of February, so 4 weeks, we hosted 2 major football games that were attended by over 80,000 people, which is way more than went to see that game. And did you hear about any of this sort of stuff at either the Super Bowl or the college football final?
Listen to me. I'm not. I think this might come as a shock to people, but I think what was the worst of all of it was the immediate echo of the Hillsborough disaster. It's Liverpool hooligans who are doing this, and it's on Liverpool. It's their fault. That's first of all, that's ridiculous, and second of all, it's so insensitive to a fan base that's actually been through a tragedy where many humans died, and and to compare, to even bring up echoes of that is silly. I think what actually happened probably was there was some ticket fraud. I myself have been defrauded by tickets, and I don't know what they were doing, but if you have like mobile app tickets and physical tickets, you used to be able to, in American sports, be able to break those up. And I went to a gate once and wasn't able to get in. So if that was an ability and people were doing that, I mean, that's that I could see that happening. But the scale of it, 30 to 40,000 people, seems just ridiculous. And I think what probably actually happened is people started showing up with duplicate or fake tickets, and everybody overreacted and nobody knew what to do. They didn't have a solid plan. But then just when you're the authorities and it was your fault, and then you pin it on a fan base, especially this Liverpool fan base, whose supporters had to fight for 20 years to get the government to do anything about the Hillsborough disaster. I mean, that's just, that was really bad. Now, I myself am angry about that. And I've got no love for Liverpool.
That is why I'm so cautious not to say that it is Liverpool fans, because It's too easy. And I think that they went on the convenience thing and said, and that, again, that goes back to what Will was saying about poor management in that moment. Oh, these are Liverpool fans. We need to be wary of them. We know what their history is. We know what English fans' history is. Remember, it wasn't just this summer that they had incidents at Wembley, right? We know how these people are. We need to be uber on guard. And I tried to reach out to a friend of mine who I know is a diehard Liverpool fan. Not that Matt and Will, you are not, but he's one of those guys who I know would have either been at the game himself or knew somebody who was, to get his, Will, Sean. I tried. Will knows who I'm talking about. Yeah, I tried to get in touch with my friend Sean to see what the truth was, because I flat out refused on this forum to cast aspersions on Liverpool fans until I have evidence that, clear and undisputed evidence, that they were somehow at fault. And like you said, I don't believe, I can joke about it and I can say, I don't believe, Will, that they're smart enough to come up with a scheme to counterfeit 40,000 tickets. I just don't believe that they would do that. We need answers on this, but I need European football stadium authorities to do better. I just need you to be better. Like, I need you to do this. And I know that Europeans and UEFA look down on all things American, but the one thing that we actually kind of do well, if I'm being honest, we have experience getting large groups of people in and out of stadiums effectively with only minor disruptions.
Yeah, along that
So-
line, the best comment I heard was UEFA CONCACAF the Champions League this year.
Yes, they did.
Well, to be fair, the biggest issue that CONCACAF had this World Cup cycle was the USA Mexico game. And so what happened with that specifically was they had a COVID restriction, number one. Number two, they invented a whole new ticketing system that they never tried out for the most wanted ticket in the World Cup cycle. And they couldn't figure it out. And partially because, they had to figure out which fans are going to, yell the homophobic chant over in Mexico. And they had to do a cross check to see, like, okay, well, if your ticket's there, then I know who you are with your ID and everything. And that took forever. So, but most of the time, it's been really easy to go to a CONCACAF stadium. But Mike, you're right. These issues, as far as big events go, Super Bowls, Final Fours, World Series, where multiple games, NBA Finals, college bowl games, they're even in regular NFL games, where stadiums are sell out. We're able to get people in and get people out. Even with the NFL stadiums, where like there's a mixture of people everywhere. There's not like dedicated sections. Where in a football game where you would have the dedicated Liverpool section, the dedicated Real Madrid section, and so everyone who's in a dedicated Liverpool section or Real Madrid, they go all together at once. They're in theory, they're all supposed to go together to one specific gate, and they're escorted in nicely. So you're all there together, and then the general population goes in pretty much anytime they want. But for those who are supporters who are in the supporter sections, they're supposed to go together in the assigned section and escort it through properly, and to avoid the crowds and all that. The general population going general admission going through. So this is bad. This is awful. But the very fact that people were pepper sprayed, and people of all ages, don't from the oldest of fans to children, you're trying to experience the highest level of the sport in the Confederation. It's awful, and it sucks. I don't know what they need to do something, but apparently they hired a Portuguese officials to look into the matter. And we'll see what happens with that. But it's a terrible all around.
And Matt, well, I know Matt, you said it. You think like that played on the psyche. Now, to the extent that they were made aware of the situation and that affected them, I don't know. I do know that if I get warmed up for a game and I go through and I do all of my warm-ups and I get to the point where I'm game ready, only to find out that the game is going to be delayed 30 some odd minutes, and an initial 15-minute delay turned into another 15-minute delay before they actually got started. Yeah, that's going to be a major league issue. And as Rob says, yeah, it didn't stop him from playing well, but I'm saying like it's going to throw you for a loop.
It does weigh, it has to weigh. And we've talked about, and look, UEFA ultimately and the organizers are to blame here. We've kind of danced around the disproportionate dumbass response of the French police.
I think that has still a lot to do with the fact that it was Liverpool and it was England.
Well, but see, that's sort of because I've been doing a little research here. And those of you who know anything about modern France, this should come as no shock to you about the way that French police handle crowds of, let's say, people that they deem to be potentially problematic. This is not the first time that French police have been, let's say, heavy-handed with certain fan bases that have a reputation. It's not just Liverpool fans. This happened to other English fans in the past in France. And weirdly enough, just this past year, God, it was a year ago when Russian teams were in European competitions. In Marseille, when Lokomotiv was playing Marseille, the French police were arresting anyone, including guest workers, with Russian accents, because the assumption was, you are Russian, you are here for Lokomotiv, you are a hooligan. It's UEFA, but the other side of the story is there are some real problems with French police.
I've got to look. I really, if I'm UEFA, if I'm FIFA, I've got to look at France and wonder again if I feel comfortable hosting a large scale event there. Right? We know that Paris will have the Olympics coming up soon. If I'm thinking about hosting another cup final or, a Euro game or something like that in Paris and France, I've really got to think about that. At the same time, in Marseille, they had a full stadium in the Velodrome for the rugby championship cup, which kicked off just slightly earlier than the Champions League final. And from my knowledge, there was absolutely no issue with getting people in, getting people out, nothing in the stands, nothing in the stadiums. But you're dealing with a different clientele and they probably perceive them different. So I think there is, as you said, correctly identified, Matt, a little bit of a bias there.
I
All right.
think that you're all right. There's a bias. Not really a question. There's a bias. And one thing I will say, this final was not meant to be held in Paris. It wasn't meant to be there. And there's a very good reason why it's not there. And why it was there. And, well, it was kind of a crap show. And I don't think, to go back to your original question, Mike, I don't think that it really had too much of an effect on Liverpool's game. I think it might have had a mild effect, but these are very professional young men who are very, very good at compartmentalizing. They are very good at playing the game of football. And it will be a black cloud over this final, which is unfortunate because while Liverpool did lose, it was a good final to watch. And I am just kind of very upset, but I'm also very happy because nobody got seriously injured and nobody died. And that is just very nice when you hear about a stadium mishap like this. Nobody got very seriously injured and nobody died. There were people that were injured and there were people that were hurt, which is terrible and awful, and it should be addressed. But at the very least, which is, the very bare minimum you can say, as you know, Mike, nobody died, the very bare minimum.
We set that as the very bare minimum standard that we have to do. So
That's the most British answer I've ever freaking heard. That logic is how the British Empire was built.
yes, I think nobody died. So I think though that I'm going to need people to be
Acceptable
better
loss.
than that. I'm going to need us to be better than nobody died.
I need it to be better than nobody died as well, but that is something that we can all be very happy about.
Yeah. I'm gonna need us to be. I'm gonna need you to be better. I'm gonna need you to be better. All right. With what time we have left, Mike, I want to turn to Wembley. Mike, I want to turn to your bailiwick. We had 2 championship games this week played at Wembley. The first featured Port Vale defeating Macclesfield. I believe the score on that one was 3-0. And the second one on Sunday, the world's most valuable game, saw Nottingham Forest come up to the Premier League for the first time, I think 23 some odd years, defeating Huddersfield Town on an own goal to secure their Premier League promotion. Certainly, the second game, Nottingham Forest and Huddersfield, would be the more controversial. Los, I'm not sure if you saw that or saw the highlights.
I saw the highlights. The penalty that was called diving.
All right, hold on to that because I'm going to get to you in a second because I do really want to get your thoughts on that after I give Mike a chance to tell us what his view on that game.
Well, let me just do League Two real quick because
of course, because I
Right,
tell you to
just-
do something and you're going to do whatever you want.
no,
Anyway.
it's just it's gonna flow better because you know what? I don't want to pull the crowd on who actually watched the League Two final because I don't think we'd get a majority. So just real quick, Port Vale Mansfield. Port Vale came out way better. Mansfield looked pretty like they weren't up to the moment at Wembley. I recorded a lower league report in which I made predictions. I was wrong in both, so I'm glad I made it too late for it to be posted. But Mansfield, they had the good opportunity first. You had a free header from Jamie Murphy, who's on loan from Hibs that should have made the game 1-0. It didn't. Port Vale then opened the scoring after that and broke through again 4 minutes later on very similar looking plays, rushes going at Mansfield. And then Ollie Hawkins, the center half for Mansfield, pretty much sealed their fate when down 2-0. He took an absolutely stupid second yellow to put Mansfield down to 10 for the rest of the game. Port Vale added a late third goal on a huge high looping cross from Mal Benning, who was about to be taken off. Honestly, it wasn't a really great game to watch. Mansfield was just out of sorts and didn't look like they were ready for promotion to League One. But congrats to Port Vale on your opportunity. We hope you do well and don't come back too soon. But when you talk about the championship playoff game, I said in the unseen promotion that there would be one goal and that Huddersfield would score it. I, of course, did not expect them to score it on themselves. But the way that Huddersfield plays and has played, especially against Forest this year, they experimented in their second. They started 4 in the back in their first match against Forest. It didn't work. They lost. And in fact, that was the match that got Forest back on track. Because remember, Forest started the season only taking 1 point out of their first 7 matches. So the turnaround story here is it's the biggest turnaround in English history. And I said, look, Huddersfield is not the kind of team that's going to impress you with their offense, and they certainly didn't. In this game, Sorba Thomas, who's a great story, he was playing in the National League last year, which is the 5th step on the English pyramid. He's come all the way up from non-league football, and he was really the only guy out there generating chances. In fact, one of his chances looked as though it might have gone over the line, but goal line technology showed us that it hadn't. So, and that could have been a breakthrough for Huddersfield, but at the end of the day, Forest was just too upfront and too offensive. And when Huddersfield's back 3 gets pressed into a back 5, as it can at times, it looks very negative, and it really was. And of course, they got the own goal at the end of the first half. But then the second half, really all you could say is that Huddersfield should have had 2 penalties, and then they just didn't. So, I mean, look, it's great for Forest. It's a great story. But if I'm a Huddersfield fan, I'm still mad. Like, I'm still pacing around my house because that was your opportunity. And, you know, what can you say? The championship doesn't have VAR, but all of the playoff finals this year at Wembley did. And to me, the question is, what is the point of VAR? Like, if the clear and obvious is what the motto is for what's supposed to be overturned, both fouls. I mean, the one on Toffolo cutting across the box, the most egregious. The second one, John Russell cutting in at the corner of the box where he was hit from behind. I mean, they both, and the commentators on the game both said, I saw the first one live, and I was like, penalty. And I mean, that's the question, is what is the point of VAR if you're not actually going to overturn the official?
If only we had a referee amongst us who might be able to comment.
Gotta go.
You see, and if you have to go and you can't comment on this, then I'm going to blame Mike because he messed up what I was planning to do, where it was way more important for me to talk to you about the game and the calls than to hear about what Port Vale and Mansfield did. But
we would have skipped them. We would have skipped them at all. And you know what? Port Vale deserves
that
credit.
was what one of these years he's actually going to let me conduct the train that I'm in charge of conducting.
Mike, you're just
close.
taking time away from.
Go for it.
Well, I did not see the second penalty, the one where the guy ran into the back. I did not see that one. I did see the one where the guy is cutting across top of the box, and the defender sticks the leg out and makes contact, and he goes down. And I'm like, well, when I first saw it, like Wembley Mike said, first saw it, first view, oh, that's a penalty. And then I remembered, oh wait, they didn't call a penalty in this. And it was a big kerfuffle in the thread as I kept perusing while I was out and about, but I kept perusing to find out what was going on. And when I heard the Huddersfield should have had a penalty, I'm like, well, I can't wait to see this. And when I saw it initially, I'm like, oh, that's a penalty. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, these guys didn't get one. Let me see what they saw. So I saw the replay and I'm like, okay, well, it's obviously a penalty. VAR, clear and obvious errors are supposed to be fixed. This is clear and obvious that Jonathan Moss got the call wrong, that he carded the player for simulation and instead should have given a penalty kick, rightfully so. And if not, a yellow card to the defender who took him down. But that didn't happen. And like Wembley Mike said, what is VAR if it's not going to go ahead and correct the errors that it's designed to correct? So I think they missed the boat on this one.
I genuinely wonder if that was Jonathan Moss's last match as an official. He's retiring. And
well, good.
Well, yeah, no, he needs to now. He definitely does. But if that was a concern, if VAR didn't want to show him up and make him look bad,
If they are
Los,
if they are literally sitting there and thinking to themselves, we are not going to show up Jonathan Moss because it's his last game, despite the fact that he got this call wrong.
But you don't have to show him up. You can say, hey,
John, go look at this again.
Like,
look at the monitor.
At it again. Go to the monitor and look at it. Because I mean,
but that's part of the problem with it too, is that when you go to the monitor, it's getting overturned. Like if there's going to be a monitor, then the referee should have a genuine decision to make.
But that's okay. Part of the problem is our experience this year has been, if VAR calls down and says, you need to go back over and look at this on the monitor, it's getting overturned, whatever the call is. If it's a penalty, it's getting reversed. If it's no penalty, it leads me to wonder whether or not the referees themselves feel like they have enough confidence in their call to stand by what they saw the first time around.
Look,
I have seen this before. One of the first matches that I watched with VAR back in the Confederations Cup about 6 years ago was a match, I believe it was like Cameroon and Mexico. And Cameroon, the referee blew for a yellow card. VAR looked at it. They told the guy, go and look at it again, see if you want to give a red card. He said, no, I want to keep it as a yellow card. And that was the end of it, right? So we can all say it was penalty. They needed to call down. He needed to look at it again. I think in this case, if he had seen it again and seen the contact, that John Moss would have said that's a penalty. It is clear when you see it in slow motion that his foot makes contact with the player. He moves his foot into the player, so it's not incidental contact. He's not going for the ball. He trips him. The guy went over a little bit more theatrically than he needed to, but he was clearly impeded. And we complain about the lines and the slow motion. Look, we all know that Real Madrid's goal got disallowed in the first half because the player was on his knee with his one leg behind him that he could, but those are the rules, right? So I don't think that and if there was any inkling of, oh, we're not going to overrule John Moss's calls because this is his last game and he's a respected rep, then that's the most idiotic thing that they could have done.
If you call Jonathan Moss over to take a look at it on the monitor, you aren't saying, hey, you have to overturn this. They're just saying, you need to look at this one more time. And if you still want to make the call like you did, then fine. At least you had a chance to look at it and see whether or not you wanted to make the change on the call. I don't know. Maybe it's a pride sort of thing.
Yeah, but I think
the last match.
I think the bigger issue is, well, real quick, I think that the guidance has been, in our experience, has been that if they're looking, it's automatically they're feeling second guessed, so they feel like they have to. More so empowered to, hey, I'm going to look. Hey, by the way, I looked at this. I still stand by what I said. So be it. Go ahead, Will.
I think if you're considering a referee's pride, then you just have to look at teaching for a second. I mean, several of us are teachers here, and I know for a fact that this year I have made about 50 spelling errors and 5 or 6 math mistakes on the board as I was explaining something. And then a student has just called me out on it. And I've just said, yeah, you're right. There's no real question. I was wrong here.
I give extra credit for that, Will.
I mean, like
They found my mistake in the middle of the lecture. That's extra credit.
We're fallible, we're human. We can't exactly be perfect all the time, and you can't expect that from a teacher, and you can't expect that from an official in a game. And that's what VAR is supposed to be. And if it takes the VAR official saying, "Hey, look, go look at the monitor," you might be wrong. And when they say "might be wrong," it's kind of like the student, like, "Oh, Mr. William, I'm not entirely certain you did that math correct." When they know for a fact you didn't do the math correct because you didn't have a calculator on you, and they do. I mean, of course you're wrong. Like, come on. It's not that difficult to accept.
Well, but that's
I mean, yes, of course, you get the opportunity to look at it again as a teacher and say, no, I didn't get this wrong. I just did it a different way, and you actually plugged it into your calculator wrong. That's the referee looking at the monitor. For me, that's the ref looking at the monitor. It's not a bad thing to look at the monitor, and 99 times out of 100, you say, no, yeah, I was wrong because I was 25 meters away. I was running, I was out of breath, and I've been running for the last 77 minutes.
And so that's, I mean, that's, I came to like a wild hypothesis like that, right? Because what else could it be? It was so clear and obvious to us, but even more so, they had a chance to issue a makeup call. Like, all right, we all got it wrong the first time. We could give you a makeup call because the second foul on Russell, where the guy just stepped on the back of his leg, was equally as clear and obvious an error and a penalty. And so I wonder if, this is the last match, but also if the EFL was like, look, we don't use VAR in games. We don't want it getting involved unless it's just ridiculous. Though, how much more ridiculous can it be?
That's a fair point there, Mike. That's a fair point that they don't use VAR during the regular season. So why use it now? We want to avoid using it now, even for the match that determines promotion. So we don't want to use it if we can avoid it.
Then don't have it.
Right.
And this goes back to a conversation that we all had when we were watching. So they don't use VAR in the regular season in the lower leagues. They do use it during certain cup matches. We sat here and had this conversation a couple of months ago where we sat and said, and I remember Mike and Will being a part of this, where we discussed whether or not we should have it in FA Cup matches, because it seemed ridiculous to have it in some as opposed to others. And I said, if you're going to play by a certain set of ground rules, play by that set of ground rules. If you're going to play with VAR, use VAR, use it appropriately. If you're not going to have VAR, then don't have VAR. But don't have some games where you have it, don't have some games where you don't. Don't sit there and tell me that, oh, you know what, we had it available in this, and we had a Premier League VAR squad that was there available to do it, but what we really did was we didn't want to use it. Then don't have it. And if the EFL was like, the Premier League told us that we had to do it, then reach down, put your big kid pants on, and say, no, we're not going to do it. We don't play like this. These are our rules. Like, I just can't imagine that they walked in and said, somebody like the VAR gods came in and said, you must use VAR and you must use it this way for this game, because if you don't, bad things will happen. Like, I'm looking for Seinfeld and the Soup Nazi. No football for you.
But it was all, you know, it was the first real instance because the League One and League Two finals also had VAR. And aside from the goal line decision system, which all League Two stadiums have, aside from that, there was no real VAR controversy. But for a promotion game to be decided like that, I mean, it's motivation for you, Huddersfield. Like, go out there, like, skip the playoffs next year, just go straight up. But that's got to be so hard for. I mean, I know the way I would feel, and it would not be happy.
But yeah, and the other thing about that is, like, if you don't want to be in a position where you're ruining a missed call for an equalizer and a potential missed call like those two, we didn't get those. You know what you do? You put the ball in the back of the net.
Right.
And preferably the one of the opposition, not your own. Because in the highlights that I watched, no disrespect to Huddersfield and the Terriers, it was Nottingham Forest who had the more numerous chances. And from what I saw, they were the team that was on the front foot. They created more. They were more aggressive. They had the better team. They were more threatening. And there's also that, like, you know, yeah, it got to the 75th minute and Huddersfield were throwing everything in the kitchen sink at them. But where had they been for the previous 75 minutes of this game?
Well, yeah, I mean, they were there. They had some chances, but they, you know, Huddersfield's style